Hey, this is Gary Talley, and I want to welcome you to my Dadgum podcast. I'm going to be talking about my experience in the music business, playing with the box tops in the 60s, the Beach Boys, Jimi Hendrix, the Doors, a lot of interesting stuff. I'm going to be interviewing other musicians. We're going to be talking to my mom, Nita Talley, and how she learned how to play and sing. We're going to be talking about how to play a musical instrument, how to learn how to play, and some misconceptions people have about learning to play an instrument, especially guitar. I want to remind you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go to my website, GaryTalley.com, and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Let me know what you want to talk about, and stay tuned. Okay, here's another Dadgum podcast. My first group of podcasts were box top stories about things that happened when I played in the box tops in the 60s. I talked about meeting Jimi Hendrix and the Doors and doing sessions at Abbey Road Studios, going to London, a lot of things like that. And I want to go back now to the very beginning and talk about music and the impact that it's had on me and my life and my whole family. I was born in 1947, and so even before I was born, when I was in my mother's womb, I was hearing music every day because my mother, Nita, and my dad, Charles, sang and played every day. He played guitar and sang bass, just like the song Daddy Sang Bass, and my mother sang alto and played piano, and they did that every single day. My dad would come home from work, and sometime in the evening, usually after dinner, they would sing and play. And my brother and I, my brother's 18 months younger, and when we were kids, we started singing along with our parents, and they sang a lot of gospel songs, and they also sang some of the popular songs. This is the late 40s and early 50s. For some reason, I wasn't that interested in the piano, but I was fascinated with the guitar. And my brother and I both learned to sing harmony when we were little kids, and I don't know how we did it. We just did it all by ear, and both of my parents played by ear. When you hear people singing harmony, even though you don't know how to explain it, you can, at some point, we just heard how to do it. We could hear how far away the one note was from another note. That's learning intervals and ear training. We didn't know what to call it, but that's what was happening. And so at some point, I got a guitar. I don't even remember how old I was, maybe 11. My dad got me a guitar from Sears Roebuck. It was a nylon string guitar, which we called it a gut string because strings before nylon were really made of catgut. So we called it the Sears Silvertone gut string guitar. And I didn't know it at the time, but the action was really high. It was hard to play. I didn't really know any better. Most guitars are a little easier to play than that one was. My dad had some kind of guitar. I don't remember what it was. I remember part of the time it had a missing string, but I would sit there with that guitar on my lap, and I would play melodies on one string. I would just figure them out by ear. But when I got this Silvertone gut string guitar, I think it cost about $50 at Sears, began to learn to play chords. My dad showed me how to play a G, a C, and a D, or maybe a D7, and I learned to play You Are My Sunshine, which is a 3-chord song. And I remember I would learn chords pretty regularly, and when I got to the F chord, I was very frustrated because it was hard to make. And you had to press down 2 strings with one finger, and then with your other 2 fingers, you had to get 2 more strings. So you had to play 4 strings and get every note clear. This guitar was hard to play, and it took me quite a while to be able to make that F chord. I could already make 8 or 9 chords, but that one was a roadblock. I think I spent a whole summer not going outside and playing baseball or whatever, trying to figure out how to make that F chord. And I remember distinctly thinking, my hands are not going to do this. Something's wrong. It's impossible. One day, I didn't do anything different, but there they were, those 4 notes on that F chord, and they were all clear. And I thought, wow, how did that happen? So my fingers must have learned how to do it without me consciously doing anything different. And when I could make the F chord, that was a big deal for me. Then there was a B minor, which I could make in the 4-string version, but to get the bass note in the B minor chord, you had to play 5 strings and make what's called a bar chord. So one finger, my index finger, had to press down 5 strings. So that was pretty hard. That was my first bar chord, because you could make a 4-string F and it would sound okay, but the B minor sounded kind of weak without that bass note. I finally got that. And now that I could play an F and a B minor with the bass note, then I had to learn how to play a 6-string bar chord, an F again. So I could play a 4-string F, but playing a 6-string F with all 6 strings was very difficult. And it took me another few months to do that. All the time my hands were getting stronger because I was playing a guitar that was hard to play, which I didn't find out until years later how hard that guitar was to play. So my hands were getting pretty strong. And I would learn new chords, and I would play, and I would learn songs all the time. And I guess I had a chord vocabulary of maybe 20-something chords. But you can really play a lot of songs with about 20 chords if you know how to use a capo to put things in different keys. And so I learned fairly early how to use a capo to put a song in a key where I could play it. And all along I was learning more and more chords. I learned 9th chords and major 7th chords and augmented chords and diminished chords, and I began to understand how to use them. I listened to the radio all the time, and my parents liked different kinds of music. My dad loved country music, and so I was learning the country songs that he knew, and my mom loved the pop music of the day and would listen to the radio and we would hear the Andrews Sisters and the Mills Brothers and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and Patti Page and Tennessee Ernie Ford and Perry Como and all this kind of stuff. And on the top 40, you could hear a lot of these songs on the same station. You could hear Little Richard and Chuck Berry on the same station that you were hearing Dean Martin and Louis Armstrong. So it was really an interesting combination of songs you would hear on one radio station. Then I started listening to the black stations in Memphis, WDIA and WLOK, and I got introduced to R&B and blues, and they called R&B soul music back then, and so that was really popular, and I loved that. And, of course, there was Duane Eddy and the Ventures, and James Burton was playing with Ricky Nelson, all this wonderful guitar music. And this is all before the Beatles. Now, when the Beatles came out, that was another whole thing. That was just an explosion. And every kid in Memphis seemed like was playing an instrument and had a band. There were so many garage bands in Memphis, just tons of them. So I'd listen to my parents play at home, and their friends would come over on Sundays and bring guitars and fills and mandolins, and there was a police captain in Memphis called Captain Glisson, and he played guitar, and he had a silver-tone guitar with 3 pickups in it. And that's where we looked at guitars a lot, was in the Sears catalog, and these silver-tone guitars. And they had a silver-tone guitar that had an amplifier built into the case, and they had this really cool one was a semi-hollow body with 3 pickups, and that's the kind Captain Glisson played. And he would play songs like Lady of Spain and things like that. And there was a local kid named Travis Wammack who was a few years older than me, and he was making records when he was a teenager, and he made an instrumental record called Scratchy and one called Distortion, and I could go see him play, and you could see bands play on these flatbed trailers, outside a shopping center opening or something. One of our local bands was Booker T and the MGs. They just lived a few blocks away from us. Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn did, and they went to the same high school I did, just a few years older than I was. And John Evans, one of my friends, who later I was in the Box Tops with, saw Elvis playing at a gas station opening. So it was kind of an amazing place to be at the time. It was Elvis, of course, he was the biggest thing in the world. And then there was Jerry Lee Lewis and Carl Perkins and Billy Lee Riley, all the rockabilly guys. That was going on in Memphis at the time. And you could hear those guys playing around. Of course, until I became older, I couldn't get into a lot of the cool places to hear music. But there were all these teen clubs in Memphis and a lot of really good bands. I remember going to see Bobby Whitlock, who was later with Derek and the Dominoes and Delaney and Bonnie and all that. And a little before that, there was the folk music craze, the Hootenanny days and all that stuff. So I learned a lot of folk songs and Kingston Trio stuff. And then, of course, the whole British invasion, the Rolling Stones and the Who and the Animals and the Dave Clark Five. And, of course, I'm learning every song that I can in all these different genres. So, of course, by now, I'm wanting an electric guitar. So my dad was a mailman, a letter carrier for the post office. He didn't make a whole lot of money, and he had 3 kids. But one day I come home from school, and there's this guitar case in the living room, and it just smelled so good. And it says Fender on it, and I am just over the moon. So I open it up, and there's this beautiful Fender Duosonic guitar, and it was white with a reddish kind of tortoiseshell pickguard. Just beautiful. And something about the way a new guitar smells in the case, and it's just thrilling, I guess is the best word for it. I was so excited. So I'm going to end this podcast right here with getting my first electric guitar. It's in the mid-'60s. I'm in high school in Memphis, and we'll see you later. Next time we're going to take up where we left off in the 60s in Memphis, talk about learning guitar, the songs that influenced me, the musicians that influenced me, the music scene in Memphis, and things like that. Thanks for listening to my Dadgum podcast. I want to invite you to interact with me by going to my website, GaryTalley.com. When you get there, you can book me to play gigs, teach guitar workshops, or book individual guitar lessons. You can follow the Box Tops touring schedule. You can link to my YouTube channel and subscribe to that. See videos of my mom, Nita Talley, singing and playing piano, and buy my mom's CDs. I play live around Nashville in a few bands. I have a duo with Sally Sladen Berry called Take Two, and we've got a Facebook page. I do recording around Nashville, playing guitar on songs, and I can do that for you too. Thanks for listening.